Welcome, everyone. This is DerekJ Speaks, and today we are talking about WWE Clash at the Castle live from Principality Stadium in Cardiff, Wales, the first WWE pay-per-view from the UK in 3 decades. The last one, of course, being SummerSlam 1992 from Wembley Stadium, with the main event of Bret Hart defending the Intercontinental Championship against the British Bulldog, one of the greatest matches of all time, contested for the Intercontinental Championship. And it's fitting that 3 decades later, we have a show like this with another fantastic, historic match to add to the lineage of the Intercontinental Championship. But as great as that match was, that is not the biggest story coming out of this show. Oh no. The biggest story is that the the homeland boy, Drew McIntyre, with the weight of the world on his shoulders, with so much momentum behind him, rolling in to Clash at the Castle, went toe-to-toe with the tribal chief Roman Reigns for the Undisputed Universal Championship in the main event, and got screwed by the debuting newest member of the bloodline, Solo Sikoa. Of course, the younger brother of the Usos, who has been quite popular in NXT over the last several months, but for the last few weeks, we have heard rumors that Solo Sikoa will soon be making the jump to the main roster. And no bigger way for him to come onto the scene than to debut on this show and help his cousin Roman, his tribal chief, escape Cardiff with the championship. And then after that, Drew McIntyre sang a bunch of songs with Tyson Fury. So, not the best way to go off the air. A very flat ending to what was an overall really great show with some really great matches, one of the best matches of the entire year, and one of the best Intercontinental Championship matches in several years. A shocking betrayal of a son to his father, and so much more. Let's go ahead and get right into it. First of all, have to shout out the production crew for setting up a very nice looking arena setup here. With how the stadium, I should say, was configured and set up, the fans were very, very close to the entranceway, so no pyro on the show. We had steam, like when Edge made his entrance, there was steam, but no pyro. There was some fire bursts in the corners of the ring, but other than that, no pyro. And this show was very historic because for the first time in several months, we actually had a match on the Kickoff show. It was a random 6-man tag team match with the team of Madcap Moss and the Street Profits taking on Austin Theory and the Alpha Academy. Yes, Austin Theory is now the second man under the Triple H regime to regain his full name. The first was Matt Riddle on Monday Night Raw the previous week, and now here we have Austin Theory back. So this match, it was just your random standard 6-man tag. It is the first of 5 6-person tag team matches that will take place over the course of this weekend. In fact, there was another 6-person tag that happened right after this one on the main show. But this match, just a regular match, although it did have a cool finishing sequence where on the outside, Angelo Dawkins was out there. He had Chad Gable up on his shoulders, and behind him was Moss and Otis and Theory. Ford is in the ring. He dives out over the top rope, hits a blockbuster on Chad Gable off of Angelo Dawkins' shoulders, and they crash down onto the rest of the pile. And then back in the ring, Ford goes up top, hits the frog splash, and gets the 1, 2, 3 for his team. And already this was a nice little preview of how hot this crowd was, because they were going crazy for these closing moments, and they went crazy for the babyfaces winning here. And that led right into the opening of the show. It was a 6-woman tag team match. The team of Bayley, Io Sky, and Dakota Kai taking on Asuka, Alexa Bliss, and the Raw Women's Champion Bianca Belair. This crowd was hot for Bayley. They were doing the whole "Hey Bayley" sing-along thing that the UK crowds have traditionally done for her. I believe the first time I ever heard it was way back in 2015 when NXT had their first London takeover show. And they were really hot for her that night, and they were really hot for her on this night. But of course, Bayley is a great heel, and she was rejecting all of this love. But Bayley was easily the most over act in this entire match. At one point in this match, we had a very brief sequence of moves between Io Sky and Asuka, and all it did was make me want to see more of that. In fact, it was interesting. Just further proof that we have different people in charge. Michael Cole made mention of the history between Io and Asuka by mentioning the fact that the two of them were a part of the same faction a decade ago in Japan, in the Stardom promotion. It was Io, Asuka, at the time Kana, and I believe Io's sister Mio. I believe it was the three of them who were in that faction. So very interesting to hear Michael Cole mention that on commentary. But very brief interaction with Io and Asuka in this match, but I would love to see that singles match somewhere down the line. Dakota was good. Bayley, of course, like I said, she was playing up the heel stuff here. Alexa Bliss, just kind of there. You know, she didn't really have much of an impact on this match, and that's just kind of the state of Alexa Bliss and her character right now. So hopefully that can be rectified at some point. But Bianca Belair was the big hot tag that they were building up to throughout the majority of the match, and finally they got that tag and Bianca came in. There was a really cool spot where Bayley was up top on the very top of the turnbuckle, and she had Bianca's braid tied up in the corner. So Bianca is kind of bent over, tucked in the corner with her braid tied up on the top turnbuckle. But while Bayley is up there, Alexa and Asuka come over. They get on Bianca's shoulders, on her back I should say, and they superplex Bayley off of the top. So I thought that was really cool. It was a back and forth with Dakota and Bianca, where Dakota kept trying to throw her big kick, but Bianca was thwarting it at every turn. We see Bianca propped up in the corner. Dakota is going for the kick, but Bianca catches her and gets her in position to hit the KOD. However, from the apron, Io Sky comes in and she saves Dakota. I believe she pulled her off of her. And then Bayley, on the other side, starts pulling on Bianca's braid again and holds her in position for Dakota Kai to come in and hit the kick after all. Quick tags between Io and Bayley into the match. Bayley comes in, hits the rose plant on Bianca, and then Io goes up top and hits the moonsault. Bayley was the legal person in the match. She gets the pin and wins it for her team. The heels win, but most importantly, Bayley gets a pinfall victory over the Raw Women's Champion, which is something that's very not unfamiliar between Bayley and Bianca. Throughout majority of Bianca's run as the SmackDown Women's Champion, Bayley got several title shots against Bianca. Many times was because she got a pinfall victory over Bianca in a tag team match. So that has now transferred a year later over onto Raw, and it was the right outcome. Bayley, Io, and Dakota, they are still the new faction that are trying to get over as the top heel force on the show. They came out, their Titantron Red Damage Control. They didn't introduce them as a group called Damage Control, but it looks like that might end up being their group name. So hopefully they don't get in trouble with Marvel and the MCU, but that looks like it's going to be their name. And after Io and Dakota lost the previous week on Raw and the women's tag team title finals, it made sense for the heels to get the win here. It made even more sense for Bayley to be the one to pin Bianca to set her up as a future challenger for that championship. So a nice little open to the show. In one of the many video packages that aired on this show, which are done because if you have a higher tier subscription to Peacock, in place of the commercials that they'll air on the lower tier, they just show random video packages of people. And in this case, they showed one for Cody Rhodes. And it just made me think, man, you know what? I really miss Cody Rhodes. I miss seeing him on TV. They got kind of cute, a little too cute for their own good with it towards the end there with the countdown to Cody stuff. But he was proven to be a ratings draw for a little bit there. And he went down with an injury. So this just reintroduced Cody Rhodes into my mind on this show, which will play into my thoughts on the outcome of that main event later on. They had a quick tribute for the SummerSlam 92 main event, and they showed Bret Hart in the crowd watching on. Got a huge pop. And that led into the next match, which was for the Intercontinental Championship. Gunther defending the championship against Sheamus. Sheamus was out first with Ridge Holland and Butch in his corner. And then we see Ludwig Kaiser in the entranceway. And he is introducing who I thought he was just going to introduce Gunther. But no, first he introduces Giovanni Vinci. So Giovanni Vinci is making his main roster debut. He was left to the side in NXT. He was left behind in NXT when they called up Walter and Kaiser all those months ago. But now Imperium is back in full force. And out came Walter. All three men entered the ring. And the four other men, Butch, Holland, Vinci, and Kaiser, all started to brawl. All the while, Gunther and Sheamus are just staring each other down, not moving. We have seen this happen over the last several weeks on SmackDown between the two of them. But then once all the other guys cleared out, Butch hit a moonsault to the outside onto the whole pile of heels. They all left, and it just came down to Sheamus and Gunther, and the brawl ensued. And within the first few seconds of this match, there's already chops flying, hard fists, and all these big blows. And within seconds of this match, Gunther has a bruise on his side, and Sheamus's chest is already starting to turn red. So you knew this was going to be one hell of a fight already. Gunther, after Sheamus had a flurry in the beginning, he gained advantage, and then he slammed Sheamus on the outside onto the flattest surfaced steel steps, and he was pretty much in control for majority of the match from that point, just abusing Sheamus with chops. The two of them started to have, an exchange of chops, but it was definitely Gunther who was getting the better of it, and Sheamus's chest went from red to starting to blister. It looked brutal, which helps with Sheamus's pale white skin. That comes through a lot more. But then Sheamus started to try to make a comeback. He kept going for the 10 beats of the Bowdrin. He tried to do it on the announce table, but Gunther escaped. Then he tried to do it in the ring on the apron like he usually does, and he got a few in. Then the crowd started to chant one more time. The crowd was way into Sheamus. Sheamus was the unbelievable babyface in this match, easily. The crowd was loving him, and they were chanting for him to do it one more time. And Sheamus did attempt to do it one more time over on the outside by the security barricade. Back in the ring a little bit later, Gunther tries to go for a power bomb, but Sheamus managed to power out of it, injured back and all. At this point, his back started to get injured at the hands of Gunther, so he powered out of it, and he ended up hitting Gunther with the white noise. Only good for a 2 count though. Sheamus rears back, starts setting up the bro kick, but then Gunther ducks out of the way. He comes back at him, hits him with a drop kick into the corner, gets the power bomb, but again, only good for a 2 count. Gunther is getting frustrated, and then he starts to target Sheamus's lower back. He stomps on it. Gunther goes up top, but Sheamus bro kicks his hands. So Gunther was up there holding onto the top rope, and Sheamus that is, bro kicks his hands. So now Gunther is losing his balance, but now he is in position for Sheamus to hit him with the Celtic Cross. This was Sheamus's finishing move way back in his early days when he first started. It looked brutal. I think they told him to stop doing it because some of the smaller guys he was hitting it on, it looked like their heads and necks were bouncing and just getting all banged up. So made for a cool visual here, knowing that it's been so long since we've seen this move that it was cool to see it busted out here. But it was only good for a 2 count. A really good 2 count though. Sheamus goes for the brogue again, but this time his back gives out and he can't do it. He just collapses in a heap because his lower back is just too injured. Then Gunther gets him up, hits him with a powerbomb again. This time when he plants Sheamus down, all the weight of the powerbomb is right on his lower back. And with Sheamus down, Gunther is just staring down at him, and Sheamus starts to slowly get back up. And this pisses off Gunther even more, and he comes at him with a wicked lariat and gets the 1-2-3, the clean 1-2-3, and Gunther is still your Intercontinental Champion. And my words don't do this justice. This was insane. This was amazing. It was brutal and uncomfortable and kind of hard to watch. We've seen stiffer matches with other guys, but this one, it did get pretty uncomfortable, which happens for me when I watch Walter matches. But this one was great. This was the match that I was looking forward to the most on this entire show and probably of the entire weekend. And they definitely delivered and more. So I mentioned on Twitter, and I'll mention it here, easily an early match of the year contender for myself, and one of the best Intercontinental Championship matches we have seen in years. The last really great Intercontinental Championship match that I can think of, actually 2 that I can think of, both took place in 2020. There was the match on SmackDown between Daniel Bryan and AJ Styles. That was the one that went about 20 minutes and AJ got the win. And then a few months later, there was a ladder match at the Clash of Champions pay-per-view with AJ, Sami Zayn, and Jeff Hardy that I thought was one of the more creative ladder matches in a long time. And I thought that was also a tremendous match. So we've had some good ones on TV over the years, but this one was great. And it was just great to see the Intercontinental Championship actually defended on pay-per-view for the first time since WrestleMania 37 last year. The Intercontinental Championship was defended on pay-per-view, and look what happened. You have 2 world-class athletes go out there and just beat the ever-loving shit out of each other and put on a damn good show for the homeland fans, and they got the win. And after the match, Gunther is helped out by his fellow Imperium mates, and Sheamus is left alone in the ring to receive and soak up a well-deserved standing ovation. Sheamus is a character who has widely been protected in many ways on TV, but he has shifted more often than not as kind of bland and dull, in my opinion. But man, he has always been a really entertaining performer and a really great wrestler, but these last few years especially, he has just been on point with a lot of his matches, and now we see this. So great stuff. And I know Gunther got the clean win, but it would be a damn shame if we don't get a rematch between these two at some point down the line. And so the question now begged, how can you follow this? And these next few matches, all these matches that followed this were all good, including the main event. All good, even great in many cases, but nothing else topped this one. This was the best match of the entire night. Nothing else topped it. But we still had some other good matches on this show, including the match up next for the SmackDown Women's Championship. Liv Morgan defending the title against Shayna Baszler. Liv was wearing some ring attire that was paying tribute to Sensational Sherry, who wore a very similar white attire at SummerSlam 1992. So more love for SummerSlam 92. Truly one of the best SummerSlams. So Liv was trying to hang in there with Shayna, doing submissions and chain wrestling, some of that training that she received from Matt Riddle that they showed on their social media this past week. But Shayna was shrugging a lot of it off. Liv was hanging in there, but Shayna was very dominant throughout the entire match. But she was growing more and more frustrated because as dominant as she was throughout the match, Liv just kept coming back, kept remaining in the fight, and it was starting to piss off Shayna. And Liv was taking advantage of that at several points. At one point, Liv tried to lock in, and I think she was able to lock in a triangle choke. She locked that in on Shayna, and then she transitioned it into an arm bar. But Shayna, she had her hands clenched the entire time. The arm bar never really fully went into full force, and so Shayna was able to break it, and then she stomped on Liv's injured arm. Of course, the arm that was injured at the hands of Ronda Rousey and has been exasperated at the hands of Shayna Baszler in recent weeks. We see Shayna hit a really hard knee to Liv's face, but is only good for a 2 count. Sheamus, I'm thinking of the previous match. Shayna, she is in the corner on the second rope. Her back is turned. Liv is on the outside on the apron. And then she springboards, she was by the ropes. She was in the ring. She was by the ropes, but she springboards and turns it into a twisting sunset flip bomb. Sunset flip power bombs Shayna off the middle rope down onto the mat. She did a very similar move to Becky Lynch earlier this year at the Day 1 pay-per-view. So she hit that move here, which looks impressive. And is only good for a 2 count though. Actually, no, this transitioned into a really cool spot here. So she goes for the cover, but then as Shayna kicks out, she kicks out and pushes Liv off of her with such velocity that she's able to turn Liv, and as she lands down, Shayna immediately turns it into the Karafuda clutch. So she has that locked in. Liv is trying to escape it, but Shayna has it locked in. She then transitions it into an arm bar, and Liv is struggling and scratching and clawing, and she finally makes her way over to the ropes. And in the finishing moments of the match, Liv manages to thwart off any further submissions from Shayna. She hits her with a code breaker, which they name dropped. That was what Michael Cole said. It was a code breaker. She hits her with a code breaker, and that knocks Shayna back into the ropes. And then as she's staggering on the ropes, Liv comes at her and hits her with the Oblivion to get the clean pinfall win. And so Liv Morgan retains her SmackDown Women's Championship, the most competitive that Liv has looked since becoming champion all those months ago, the most competitive title defense, and easily the best match that she has had since becoming champion. A lot of her matches on TV, the SummerSlam match was what it was. It was more of an angle than a match. But even some of the matches that she's had on TV with people like Shotzi and people like that, they haven't really been all that good. So this one was definitely the best match that I have personally seen Liv Morgan in since becoming the SmackDown Women's Champion. And while it by no means came close to topping the previous match, it was still good in its own right. And the fans were still up for it. They didn't crap on it. They weren't sitting on their hands. They weren't trying to chant random things. They were into the match. They were behind Liv Morgan. They booed Shayna. So they still had the fans in their corner. So that's good. They showed some more legends at ringside. In this case, it was the legendary Adrian Street with his manager, Miss Linda. So that is long before my days as a wrestling fan, but I am aware of Adrian Street, and it was cool to see them on this show and get some love from the crowd. And up next, we had a tag team match. It was the Judgment Day. Rhea Ripley's underlings, Finn Balor and Damian Priest, taking on the team of Rey Mysterio and Lucha Edge. We had hashtag Lucha Edge on this show. Edge made his entrance wearing a lucha mask, which I thought was hilarious. He came out, again, there was no pyro on this show, so he had steam for his entrance. But as he was coming out, the crowd was singing along to his theme song. So I thought that was pretty cool. For the last few years, we've heard the AEW crowds sing along to Judas and Wild Thing and Tarzan Boy for Jungle Boy and all these different people's theme songs. I think they sing along with Cult of Personality too. So it was good to see that kind of transition over into WWE for at least one night and them singing along to Edge's theme song, which to this day is still one of my favorite theme songs. Metalingus by Alter Bridge. Great stuff. And the fans were just hot for Edge. They wanted to see him tag in and go at it with Damian Priest early on. The fans were really into Edge, but they were also into Rey Mysterio as well. I wanted to mention a very funny exchange, not funny, but it was funny to me, an exchange on commentary with Michael Cole and Corey Graves. Michael Cole was mentioning how Finn Balor has basically become the de facto leader of the Judgment Day since Edge was booted out of the group all those months ago. Corey Graves countered that point with saying that there really is no leader and that all three members are kind of on equal footing. There's no hierarchy. And between both of them, I just call bullshit. All lies detected. There is a hierarchy. There is a leader. And her name is Rhea Ripley. Rhea Ripley has been established as the most dominant force in this group. When she was gone for that period of time, Finn Balor and Damian Priest were doing absolutely nothing. They were wasting away. The only reason that the Judgment Day has any semblance of importance anymore, which is dwindling, especially after suffering big match losses like the one they suffered on this show. But the reason that they have any sort of significance and importance left is because of Rhea Ripley. So there is a leader and her name's Rhea Ripley. But the match itself, it was your standard tag team match, but the fans were hot for it, and that added an extra element of excitement for it. I was a little distracted for some of this match, talking to my girlfriend about other things, but the match itself was fun from what I could see. At one point, Edge hit a 619. I believe it was on Balor. It was either on Balor or Priest. But Edge hit a 619. And one thing I do know that he did to Priest was he speared Damian Priest. He came through the ropes and speared Damian Priest off the apron and crashing down onto the floor. Back in the ring, Balor goes up top. He is scrambling with Rey Mysterio, and he goes up top. But Dominic Mysterio, who's on the outside in the babyface's corner, he is distracting the referee long enough for Rey to take him down. And meanwhile, on the outside, while Dom's distracting the referee, Rhea Ripley comes over and she starts beating the piss out of Dominic Mysterio, starts throwing him around ringside and all that. And then Rey Mysterio sees this. He dives out of the ring on top of both of them, but mainly to take out Rhea Ripley. So now Rhea's disposed of. Rey back in the ring. He sets up Balor to go for a 619, but as he's bouncing off the ropes, Balor catches him with a wicked clothesline. And then as Baszler bounces off the ropes, Dominic, who's still on the outside, trips up Baszler. And then Rey manages to hit Baszler with the 619. Edge is back in. He's the legal man. He hits the spear and gets the 1-2-3, and the babyfaces win. This did absolutely nothing for the Judgment Day. They did not need to lose here, especially seeing what played out afterwards. You still could have had the Judgment Day win. In fact, it would have probably made even more sense if the Judgment Day won, but whatever. After the match, Edge and Rey Mysterio, they're celebrating together. Dominic gets in the ring, and there's been tension in the past with Dominic and Edge, so the two of them come face to face, and Edge is all smiles and proud of Dominic, basically. And then Dom lowers the boom, and he kicks Edge right in the dick. Gives him just a swift kick to the balls. Edge goes down, but he goes down in a way where he's like looking up at Dominic as he's going down. Like he feels the pain and he's selling the pain, but he's still looking up at Dom in just complete disbelief. Rey is in even more disbelief. He can't believe what his son just did. He's pulling and tugging on his shirt. He's trying to tell him to calm down. What are you doing? What are you thinking? And it looks like Dom is having some kind of remorse, or his father is doing enough to try to talk him down. And once it looks like it works, Dom lowers the boom on his own father, and he hits Rey with a clothesline and takes Rey Mysterio down. Meanwhile, on the outside, the Judgment Day are looking on. They're laughing. They're laughing at this. They're having a ball. You know, I guess it's funny. They just lost the match, but I guess that's funny. So Dom leaves. The crowd is showering him with boos as he's walking to the back. He leaves. All that's left in the ring is Edge and Rey Mysterio. It looks like Rey is basically on his knees pleading with Edge that he didn't know that was going to happen. And Rey is distraught. And so Edge picks him up. They share a hug. And they make their way to the back while the fans applaud them. So they finally pulled the trigger on a Dominic Mysterio heel turn. This has been something that has been planted and teased for a very long time, long before this Judgment Day stuff has happened. So it's not overly shocking, especially considering the fact that, as many people tweeted, I think Shelton Benjamin was one person, Dom has been getting dominated by Rhea Ripley for weeks now. Clearly, the boy is wrapped strictly around her finger. So, of course, he's going to do whatever it takes to be in her good graces. And if that meant low blowing a Hall of Famer and beating down his own father, clearly that's what Dominic wanted to do. So, this doesn't necessarily mean he's going to join the Judgment Day. That's not exactly what this meant. He left on his own. It's not like he helped with the Judgment Day or he left with them. There's still time for that if they want to go down that road, but Dominic did what he did here, and it looked like there was no signs of him joining the group. It just looked like he turned heel because he was fed up with his father. He was fed up with Edge. So we'll see how this plays out. We'll see what kind of heel fire lies within Dominic Mysterio. I'm very curious how he'll be in this role. What we've seen of him on TV so far, his acting chops aren't all that great. So I question how good he'll be in this role, but I am willing to give it a chance. Up next, probably the most heated personal feud heading into the show, Seth Rollins versus Matt Riddle. Of course, following their big heated promo exchange on Raw, the interest level for this match was very high, and I was expecting a fight. I didn't want to see the bell ring and they just go for a collar and elbow tie-up, and that's exactly what did not happen. Thank God. The bell rang, and Riddle went right after Seth, and he was just all over him to the point where the referee was pulling him off, and Riddle was kind of getting in the referee's face. And that remained the big central story of this match is that Matt Riddle is pissed off, he's fired up, he's intense, and he's just ready to rip Seth Rollins apart. So his emotions are running high, which also means he's not really thinking clearly. He can be distracted, he can be taken advantage of, all that kind of stuff. And the story here was that Seth was taking advantage of that intensity and emotions from Riddle all throughout the remainder of the match. At one point, Rollins had Riddle up top and was going for the Superplex Falcon Arrow combo. He hit the Superplex, but as he was going for the Falcon Arrow, Riddle countered it into a Fisherman Buster and only got a 2 count off of it. On the outside, Seth is out there. Riddle is on the apron and he springboards off of the middle rope and hits the Flying Bro right down onto Rollins. Back in the ring a little bit later, Rollins goes for the pedigree, but Riddle counters it and turns it into the Bro to Sleep, strikes him right in the face with a knee, only good for a 2 count. Riddle goes back up, comes down for the Floating Bro again, but this time Rollins gets the knees up. Rollins goes for the stomp. Riddle moves, but then Rollins goes for his rotating forearm, but Riddle counters that into a submission and gets Rollins down. A little bit later, back up, both men, Rollins hits Riddle with one of his own finishers, the Bro Derek. So he hits him with his own finisher, only good for a 2 count. Riddle went for a power bomb, but as he got Rollins up, he swung him up. Rollins slipped right out of it and hit Riddle with a pedigree, a nice looking pedigree. He had the arms locked. He kept it locked as he drove Riddle down. Very cool, very nice. Love it when they do the pedigree like that. So he hits him with the pedigree, only good for a 2 count. Rollins then proceeds to start talking shit to Riddle, talking about his family and his kids again. And then Riddle snaps. He starts slapping Rollins and just starts beating on him. Brings him to the outside, just slamming his head up and down on the announce table. Throws Rollins back in the ring. And as Riddle is getting in the ring, he's on the apron, but he gets caught up in the ropes by Rollins, who hits him with a draping DDT. Of course, paying homage / mocking Riddle's buddy, Randy Orton. Even more so is he gets in the corner, he gets on the ground in the ring, and he starts pounding the mat, summoning an RKO that he's about to hit on Riddle. But as he goes for it, Riddle catches him in a sleeper hold. And then with Riddle starting to beat down on Rollins again, I think he broke the hold and he just starts raining down blows on Rollins. Gets him on the outside. He grabs a steel chair. So now he's ready to just completely decimate Rollins. The rules be damned. He goes to swing the chair, but Rollins moves out of the way and Riddle ends up hitting the announce table. So Rollins skinnies back in the ring and then Riddle follows him, but once again he gets caught in the ropes and Rollins hits him with a curb stomp. He doesn't go for the cover right away. As Riddle crawls over towards the middle of the ring, Rollins goes to the corner, gets on the second rope, and hits a super stomp right onto Riddle and gets the 1-2-3. And with that, Seth Rollins scores his first pinfall victory on pay-per-view since Survivor Series last year, where he was the sole survivor for Team Raw, and it is his first singles pay-per-view victory since Hell in a Cell last year against Cesaro. So it has been a long drought of Seth Rollins getting a victory on pay-per-view. So it was good to see here. The match was very good. There was a point in the middle of it where it kind of came down. The crowd started to die down a little bit. But these two are pros and they were telling a good story and the fans were very much into it. and it built and built, and the fans were really into it by the end. I failed to mention, how could I fail to mention Seth Rollins' entrance attire? He was paying homage to Elton John. He came out in very bright orange, fiery gear, and he had wings and a helmet, a horned, fiery helmet. He had some heart-shaped sunglasses, and someone posted an image of Elton John with that image, wearing that. Actually, it was an image of Taron Egerton, who played Elton John in the movie Rocket Man that came out a few years ago. That's what I saw, and that's what it put two and two together for me. So I completely failed to mention that. That was probably the biggest highlight of the match. But the match itself was really good. Like I said, I like the story. I appreciate the story of Rollins using Riddle's own emotions against him to get the win. And I imagine this is going to set up a rematch between the two of them with some kind of stipulation attached at the next pay-per-view, which they announced here is going to be on October 8th from Philadelphia, PA, Extreme Rules. So if there's any match on that show that deserves to have some kind of stipulation in their match, it is definitely Riddle and Seth Rollins. But good stuff here. They showed more stars at ringside. They showed Tyson Fury, who they showed earlier in the night. They did show Tyson Fury at ringside, but they showed him here again, and they showed him also backstage, two different occasions backstage earlier in the day. He was talking to Drew McIntyre, and he was talking to Roman Reigns individually. So they showed Tyson Fury again, which was done on purpose, and they also showed Karrion Kross and Scarlett, who were in the front row. They didn't play a huge factor in the match, but they did have a little spot that was kind of a pivotal point in the momentum shifting in the match. But that all leads to the main event for the undisputed WWE Universal Championship. Roman Reigns defending the championship against Drew McIntyre. Paul Heyman was taken out by Brock Lesnar back at SummerSlam, so he's been off TV for several weeks. Drew McIntyre attacked the Usos and Sami Zayn on SmackDown the previous week, since it was taped, but they aired it the previous night on SmackDown. So that explained why Roman Reigns was all by himself in this match. He came out all by himself. 734 days as champion. I believe that is his run as Universal Champion specifically, because I think it's been over 100 something days that he's been Undisputed Champion. But 734 days of Roman Reigns as a champion. Were we going to see it come to an end here? Obviously, I spoiled that at the beginning of the show, but let's talk about the actual match. Drew McIntyre has been teasing on Twitter for the past several weeks that he was going to be coming out with his old Broken Dreams theme song, and he didn't exactly. They showed like a brief little montage vignette clip of McIntyre showing his early days and all that, just a quick little promo, but it was to the tune of the Broken Dreams theme song. And you could even hear the crowd in the background very mildly. They were cheering for it, and I could have swore I heard them start to sing it a little bit too. So that was really cool. It was just cool to hear it again. I wish it could have been the whole thing, or at least more, but it's a really dope song, and it was a really good entrance theme song for him, and it was cool that he was able to do it here. But then he made his actual entrance with his current theme song. Then, of course, Roman Reigns came out, made his entrance, and this was clear, cut and dry babyface heel on this show. There were no mixed reactions for Roman Reigns. Many times he does get mixed reactions or just flat out get huge cheers from the crowd, but that was not the case on this show. This was Drew McIntyre country, basically, and they were in love with Drew, and they booed Roman heavily. So much so that Roman was kind of playing off of that in the early part of the match. Like, he was playing up the fact that he was rattled and shaken up a bit by the fact that he's not only all by himself, but he is against Drew McIntyre in Drew's own homeland, who He's just being beloved by this crowd. So Drew was dominating for the early part of the match, and then both men found themselves on the outside, right towards the front row entrance way, right in the crosshairs of Karrion Kross, who was still out there and ended up chucking a water bottle over at Drew McIntyre. This distracted Drew, and it was enough for Roman to take advantage, and he proceeded to take control of the rest of the next few moments of the match. McIntyre was trying to fight back. He was throwing some chops at Roman, but Roman was still very much controlling this fight. He was talking trash to Drew at different points, and he even got to the point where he was fed up with the crowd, and he called for someone at ringside to give him a microphone. And then right in the middle of his own match, he tells Cardiff to acknowledge him. But he had his back turned to Drew McIntyre, so when he turns back around, Drew connects with a sweet Glasgow Kiss headbutt. It looked brutal. It looked like that was legit. His head just smacking into Roman's. You could see the sweat flying, all that. It looked wonderful. It was one of my favorite spots of the entire match. Both men find themselves up top, but it is Drew who tosses Roman off. Roman bounces off the ropes, but then McIntyre hits him with a spine buster, goes for a jackknife cover, but is only good for a 2 count. Roman starts to regain control. He goes for the Superman punch, but Drew counters that into the Future Shock DDT. He starts to set up the Claymore kick. He does the 3, 2, 1, but then Roman connects with the Superman punch, but it was only good for a 2 count. Roman does the ooh-wah and goes for the spear, but then Drew kicks him. Both men bounce off the ropes in different directions, but Roman connects with the spear finally, but it was just a very close near fall. Roman locks in the guillotine. Drew is trying to power out of it by forcing Roman into the corner, but Roman still has it applied. Drew tries to break it again, and this time he does. He backs him into the corner one more time, and he breaks the hold, and he tosses Roman shoulder first into the steel post, and then Roman basically slumps out to the outside. While out there, McIntyre, he didn't really spear Roman, but he kind of just tackled him and ran into the barricade over by the timekeeper's area. But he quickly gets back up, dumps Roman back into the ring, and he is going for the Claymore again, but Roman catches him with a second spear, only good for a 2 count. The fans are going nuts. They're still cheering for Drew McIntyre. They are just loving all of this. Both men are down, but it's Roman who gets to his feet first. And they play it up like Roman basically thought that he won. So now he's arguing with referee Charles Robinson. He's saying that was 3. He threatens to put his hands on Robinson, but then McIntyre connects with a Claymore kick to the side of Roman's face, but it knocks Robinson back into the corner and knocks him down. So now we have a ref bump. Both men are down, and we hear A-Town down. So much like at SummerSlam, once again, Austin Theory attempts to cash in his Money in the Bank briefcase. He runs down, he sprints down the ramp over by ringside with a referee in tow. He goes over by the timekeeper's area, over behind the announcers, and he's trying to get them to cash in the briefcase. But Tyson Fury, former heavyweight champion boxer, he's right there. That's where he was, and he cold cocks Austin Theory, and down goes Theory. So no cash in here. Then, back in the ring, we see Roman grab a steel chair. He goes to hit Drew with it, but then Drew catches him with a Claymore kick. All the while, the fans were chanting, "Thank you, Tyson," or "Thank you, Fury," for him stopping Theory's cash-in attempt. Both men are down, and they do the yay boo punches back and forth. Both of them are on their knees, and they slowly make their way to their feet. They're fighting back and forth again, and now it's just a slugfest. Both of them just throwing punches. Roman hits a Superman punch. McIntyre hits the Glasgow Kiss. McIntyre then hits Roman with a spear. So he takes Roman down with the spear, and at this moment you could just feel the energy is just raising up to the highest level it could possibly go. The fans are really getting into it. They are really feeling that this is going to be the moment. Drew revs back. He hits the Claymore kick. The referee counts 1, 2, and then suddenly someone pulls the referee out of the ring down to the floor. It is a hooded figure by ringside, and he slowly pulls the hood down to reveal Solo Sikoa, a man who debuted on WWE television last year as one of the main stars of the NXT 2.0 roster. He's been a main fixture on NXT 2.0 for the past several months. He received a few North American Championship matches, and he has become wildly popular with the crowd down there. And for many months, many people, myself included, have been saying this guy is ready for a call up now. And you can pair him off with the Usos, let him join the Bloodline. You can do that any day now. And that became the scuttlebutt for at least the last week, but it's been going on for several weeks. But within the last week, maybe even the past few days, the rumor circulating was that Solo Sikoa was going to be making his main roster debut soon, and he would be coming to SmackDown, which A plus B equals Solo Sikoa was going to most likely become a member of the Bloodline. And I guess they wanted to debut him with the Bloodline in the biggest, most impactful way possible, and that was here, screwing Drew McIntyre out of the championship. McIntyre, he's looking down at Sikoa. He tries to pull him up on the apron, but then as he turns back around, Roman catches him with another spear and gets the 1, 2, 3. And the reigns of terror continues. Roman Reigns, 734 days as champion. He will get to see 735, 736, and so on and so forth. This felt like it was the time for Drew to win. It felt like it, but clearly they had other plans. So the finish definitely caught the fans off guard, caught a lot of people off guard, caught me off guard. But the finish of the actual pay-per-view, the ending of the actual pay-per-view, left a lot to be desired. It's bad enough already. Drew, he had a hard-fought battle here. He got screwed, so you could understand he'd be pissed off. But Drew lost in his hometown. Doesn't look all that great here, but at the very least, he could cut a fiery, angry babyface promo or something like that. But no, Tyson Fury gets in the ring. He shakes hands with Roman. Roman leaves with Solo Sikoa. They're gone. And now Tyson Fury is back in the ring. It's him and Drew McIntyre, and they start singing. Yeah, Tyson Fury starts, he is telling him how, you did your country proud and all that stuff. But he starts singing American Pie, and then Drew gets on the mic. He's trying to start singing Sweet Caroline. He's like, I don't know if we're on the air or not. And that was my thought exactly. Why the hell was this airing on the feed? Why was this on the show? You could have done this for the crowd, but go dark. Something like this is not something you should air right on the exact same show. What sense does it make to see Drew McIntyre get screwed over and then just be smiling and all that kind of stuff afterwards? I don't want to see, maybe I'm in the minority, but I'm not a big fan of seeing Drew McIntyre, one of your top baby faces, singing and laughing 2 or 3 minutes after he just got screwed over in the biggest match of his entire career. But that's just me. So I was not a fan of that. Again, that should have just been dark for the crowd, for the live crowd. And if you want to upload it on Twitter or on your YouTube channel as digital content, bonus footage, fine. But no, this should not have aired. It should not have happened. Or at least it should not have been for us all to see. So, was not a fan of that. Now, where do these guys go from here? As for Drew McIntyre, there is a feud ready and waiting for him with Karrion Kross. There's unfinished business there. McIntyre is just not going to be really seen as a top big babyface for a while after a loss like this. He's not damaged goods, but it's going to be hard to look at him in that way for a while. As for Roman, I don't know who you pair him up with in the short term, but if he didn't lose here, then the next possible place is WrestleMania. And it is against the guy who many people months ago, myself included, were really in support of seeing be the one to dethrone Roman, and that's Cody Rhodes. Cody Rhodes is still out with his injured boobie, but the story has to be Cody Rhodes making his return, winning the Royal Rumble, and challenging Roman Reigns in the main event of WrestleMania next year, and Cody Rhodes being the man to dethrone Roman Reigns. Now, that's another several months of Roman Reigns as champion. Believe me, that's not ideal, but it's got to be done. Because who else is there? It's not going to be The Rock. If there's going to be a Rock Roman Reigns match, it cannot be for the championship. It can't. I don't want to see Rock being the one to beat Roman for that championship. That can't be the case. So the next best option is Cody Rhodes. There's no one currently on the roster who you can conceivably believe is going to beat Roman for that championship. You can put him in the ring with guys like Bobby Lashley or AJ Styles or anyone else, but no. The man to beat him, the man to dethrone Roman and take those titles from him is Cody Rhodes. So hopefully with this finish, that is what they're going to be setting up. Overall, this was a very good show. Top tier action, especially in the Intercontinental Championship match with Sheamus and Gunther. Incredible stuff. And aside from that last bit at the very end of the show, overall, top to bottom, great stuff. And this is not the last time you will be hearing my voice this weekend. I will be back tomorrow night covering AEW All Out, and a bloated card that is. But until then, be well and take care of yourself.